Hi, I'm Kelly at Book and Paper Arts, and today I have part one of a two-part series on how to turn the humble magazine page or coffee book table page into these gorgeous distressed pieces that you can use in your work, that you can use in your collage, your art journals, or other mixed media pieces. It's super easy, and you can just take these shiny, uneventful papers and then make them into this distressed, mysterious look. You can do so much with it. I really also like this because you can do it just about anywhere. Recently, I was away from my studio for a month, and I didn't have my stuff. But when I discovered this technique, I could do this at any coffee table in any place that I was staying as long as I had a magazine and something scratchy, basically. So please stay with me. This is, as I said, part one. But in a few days, I'm going to come back with part two, which is how to turn a magazine page into almost like a fabric. That's just a magazine page from Vanity Fair, people. That's all that is. And this is using a Japanese technique called momagami. And I'll be walking you through that. That's in a few days. And then I'm also going to show ways that I use all of these papers in my own art journal work. If you like art journals, if you like altered books and vintage books, paper, and other ephemera, please subscribe to my channel and be sure and turn on the notifications, and you will have more of them in your life. Let's go mess up some pages. There are two parts to today's video. And the first part is just going to show the basic technique for taking the gloss off of your papers and aging them and distressing them so that you can use them in your work. The second part, after we get the basic technique down, is going to take that technique and then elaborate it by showing you how to use it with stencils. And this will add texture and interest to your pages. I'm going to be using pages from magazines and from coffee table books, such as this one. Now, this I got from a coffee table book about roses, and it was from the 1970s. It was in a secondhand store, and because it was really cheap. It's not the kind of image that I would use as is in my work. It's pretty. Roses are always pretty, but it's also a little bit cheesy and a little bit forced. So I'm going to show you how you can remove some of the shininess and make it softer and give it a patina. To do that, you need something scratchy. My go-to is a sandpaper block. And I bought this on eBay. I'm pretty sure you can get them in DIY stores or hardware stores. You can just use straight up sandpaper. And another thing that works is steel wool or anything scratchy. This is for scrubbing pots, and this is for washing up, and then it's got a scrubby part on the back. The difference pretty much is you need to try and see what works for you, or also use what you got. These you have to apply more pressure because it's softer, and you're going to get a softer look. The sandpaper is going to be much more abrasive and scratchy, and it's going to leave scratch marks. You have to use a lighter touch, but that's not a bad look. It's just a different look, and you might prefer that. Some people do. But let's have a look at what happens with the sandpaper block. And I'm just, just sanding out that brightness and shininess. This already looks altogether different and pretty darn cool. Now, here's another step that we can add to further add patina. This is coffee and it's an instant coffee and a little bit of water. You could also use brewed coffee, tea, a watercolor wash, an ink and water wash, whatever. You want to try all of those and see what happens. Now, normally this magazine page would be glossy, which would repel the liquid on top, but now that that has been sanded down, the fibers will absorb this wash, this coffee wash. And this is starting to look very dramatic, very vintage, very gorgeous. Now I'm inking up the edges using a blending tool and an ink pad, just to add a little bit of faux aging there. And this is just completely different than what we started with. We could now, you could use it in collage, you could use it for fodder, you could glue it to some text or maybe some scrapbook paper and make it into a card or a journal page. You could push this back with a little bit of gesso. Now, let's see, I just inked up the edges, but another look would be to push it back into your background with some gesso and blend those together. You're going to get a whole nother dimension. Just pretend that's glued down. It will be. I'm just pulling that gesso out a little bit into the background. So you can do quite a few different things with this to make it your own. Here's a different technique that is going away from that vintagey patina look and going for something kind of mad and abstract, but fun. It's called overpainting. So taking this and painting over your distressed image, sanded image. You could use watercolor, acrylic, gouache. I left my watercolors in my flat today, so I'm going to use what I got. I'm going to improvise with some soft pastels. To make it stick, I'm going to get a layer of misty layer water thing there, and let's see. Now I'm going to just color into this image, but not make it exact. Make it deliberately and exaggeratedly crazy and colorful. I'm going to add a little mark making. I've got a soft pastel and a card, and I'm just going to shave off some blotches. Yeah. So this is not everybody's style, but you might like it. You might like playing with it because it's very fun and kind of outrageous. Now let's look at the version of this technique using stencils to add texture. I love stencils so much. I do have some nice ones here. These are Tim Holtz. These are Arches. And some brickwork. But one of the things I like about stencils is you don't have to have the fancy ones. You can go to any big box store or kids section of an art store, and you're going to find stencils that are inexpensive, pretty, and that you can use for ages. So let's look at how this works. This is from a coffee table book of birds. The paper is lighter than the coffee table book. If you're using the coffee table book, then you're going to have to use a lot more pressure. This one's going to be more forgiving. So all you want to do is go in and start removing, sanding it down. And as that glossy part of the paper comes up, it's going to reveal the pattern underneath. I don't want to go into Mr. Bird too much. I want to more frame them with these patterns. Let's try these some more arches here and see what happens. So this is that next step. And this is not really what I would use if I was making an art journal page, but I wanted to show you how the technique works. You have to play around with it and make it your own. I'm going to add another wash here, and this one is blue fountain pen ink with a lot of water. So let's see what happens. Yeah, now when this wash goes down, it's going in to the ridges where that color was lifted, where that glossiness was lifted. So that's how it would look maybe with an ink wash. And then you could also, again, do it with coffee or tea. If you prefer just some plain old patina. But play around with all of these. Magazine papers are cheap. Just make some samples and get started and play around. See how it's looking almost like an old Polaroid image transfer, or some film that's been faded over a very, very long time, or maybe even embroidery. It just takes on a completely different characteristics, completely different look than the original shiny magazine page. You know, I didn't go with the angels after all. I tried them out on this background with more contrast, and they really go there. So I have some ideas for them later. In the meantime, this is what I'm going with. And now that I've got this glued into place, I'm going to start distressing it using my stencils. This top palace looking thing was from the cover of a magazine, and it was super heavy, almost like a cardstock. I'm not sure how much, if any, of the stencils are going to come through on a paper this heavy. So I went ahead and sanded it before I put it down. And that's okay, because we don't have to make the whole thing stenciled. We can just add bits here and there for embellishment. I've got a couple of stencils here. This is one of my favorites. It's old-timey looking letters. I'm going to be using that. And then I'm going to try this. I'm not sure how it's going to work, but we'll give it a go. It's a clock, or watch, yeah, like a giant clock works. So I'm going to try those and get started and see where it goes. Well, this did deliver on the grunge. Now I'm going to add that coffee wash and see what happens when it works into that. Again, you could use tea or ink or what you like. And see how that's going into those. It's adding some parchment color, caramel color, to where I've lifted off the white, the gloss, and the white was just there. Some of her face came off. I might go back, and that's okay because I can go back in with some watercolors and paint them back in myself. Or not. Maybe she's a peeling fresco. All right. I will let this dry and then add a little bit of mark making. The next layer, I have gone round all of my edges with a water-soluble pencil. This one is a Graphitent by Derwent. And I'm going to activate it, not with water, but with gesso. So I'm going to go around like this. And it's kind of an eggplant color, the pencil. And I'm going to pull that out using the gesso into the background of this collage, like this. And I'm going to go all around, there, that's a little better, all around the edges and do the same. Now I'm going to take the water-soluble pencil and draw in some, go over some of these pieces that have kind of been faded out a bit. And actually this time I'm not going to activate them. I'm just going to use this to make some messy, smudgy lines. Just to pick up kind of almost like a shadow there. I'm not going to activate them, but I'm going to smudge them a little. How's that? Yeah. Smudging is looking good. And finally, maybe finally, I'm going to add some drizzle. I've got some ink here that I've made from avocados. It's avocado ink. I'm going to put it in this pipette. Now I'm going to go up here to the top and just add this ink, this maroon colored ink. And now I'm going to let it, okay, that's a little too much. Now I'm going to drizzle it. What I'm going to do is activate this a little bit with some water. I've got a spritzer here with some water in it. I'm going to try to avoid the lady and let it pool where it will. Move it around a little bit more with some water. And let that dry and see what happens. There are several different ways that you can use these distressed magazine pages in your work. It could be just a standalone image that you could use in a card or as part of a journal page. You can use it and make it into what's called fodder, where you can make these and then tear them up and then put them in your scrap box so you have different images that you can then use for a different kind of maybe an abstract collage. That would look good. So you can tear these up for fodder, then use them in your scraps. What I probably am going to do here is use these pages in and make a freeform art journal. I love making messy, asymmetrical, crazy art journals. And so I think what I'll probably do, and I am going to be making an art journal to show you at the end of next week's video, to show how they look in an art journal. But what it would be is something like this. Now that I've got this here, I'm just going to rough tear this. And now I can fold this in half. I can fold this in half. Wow, that looks good. Look at that. And now I already have 2 pages for an art journal like that. And then maybe that could be one. And then, even adding those elements like this. So that's the sort of place that I'll be going with this technique. But more soon. Please join me in a few days when I will have part 2 of this video, how to distress your magazine pages. And it will be focusing on how to use this Japanese folding and kneading technique called momagami. And these, again, are just magazine pages. That's all we have here. And I will be showing you how to do that in part 2 of this video, as well as ways that you can use these pages in your work. If you have any questions, any feedback, especially if you have worked with distressing magazine pages yourself and ways that you like to use them, please put all of that in the comments below. And we can all read that and be the richer for it. Until next time, happy making.